The storm arrived without an apology. By 9 p.m., Incheon International Airport had become a small city unto itself, a humming, fluorescent world of rolling suitcases, crumpled boarding passes, and people recalibrating their entire futures by a few hours. Departure boards flickered and reset, gates filled with the quiet, resigned sound of people learning to wait. Yuna Park had been waiting for 6 years. Not here, of course. She had been waiting in London, waiting to feel at home, waiting to stop dreaming in Korean, waiting for the version of herself she'd gone abroad to become to finally arrive. She was a good architect. Her firm respected her. She had a flat with good light and a coffee shop on the corner that knew her order. But 6 years was long enough to know the difference between a life that fit and a life that was simply well organized. She was going home. She hadn't told her mother the real reason why. She found a seat near gate 32 and opened her sketchbook. Not to draw anything specific, just to have something to do with her hands. The storm pressed against the tall terminal windows in long silver streaks. She watched it and tried not to think too hard. That was when she heard him. Okay, so, hypothetically, if every flight out of this airport is delayed until at least midnight, what's the single best use of the next 3 hours? He was talking to no one in particular, or perhaps to everyone near him. He was holding a paper cup of coffee, his olive jacket slightly damp at the shoulders, his camera bag settled against his knee like an old companion. He looked around at the rows of stranded passengers with the cheerful curiosity of someone who genuinely found the situation interesting rather than catastrophic. Nobody answered him. Yuna looked back down at her sketchbook. Sketching, she said, before she could decide not to. That's the best use. He turned, looked at her. That slow smile started in his eyes first. Eli Navarro, he said, extending a hand. Yuna Park, she replied, shaking it once, precisely. He sat down 2 seats away, close enough to talk, far enough to be respectful, and nodded at the sketchbook. What are you drawing? Nothing yet, she said. Sometimes I just need to hold it. He seemed to understand that perfectly, which she hadn't expected. They talked about everything and nothing with the ease of people who knew they were temporary to each other. He told her about the photography assignment he'd just finished in Jeju. There was this grandmother, he said, both hands moving as he described her. A Incheon diver, 80-something years old, and the way she moved through the water, it looked like the ocean already knew her. Did she let you photograph her? Yuna asked. She didn't let me, Eli said, with a reverence that surprised her. She forgot I was there. That was better. Yuna told him about London's grey winters. Rain has a direction, she said, glancing toward the storm-streaked window. Fog just sits there. It doesn't go anywhere. That bothered me more than I expected. What made you choose London in the first place, out of everywhere? She considered the question. He waited without rushing her. A building, she said finally. I saw it in a textbook when I was 22, the Barbican. I thought if I could understand why that building makes people feel something, I'd understand everything I needed to know about what I was doing. Did you? I understood about half of it. He asked good questions. That was the thing she noticed first. Not performative questions. Not questions designed to make him seem interesting. Questions that meant he'd actually listened to the sentence before. At 10:15, the board updated. Her flight delayed to 12:40 a.m. His delayed indefinitely. So, Eli said, looking at the board, then back at her. Terminal 2 still has a ramen place that's open. I checked. Yuna looked at him. You checked. I'm an optimist, he said simply. She closed her sketchbook. They found the one decent ramen stall still open in Terminal 2 and ate at a narrow counter while rain hammered the glass above them. She told him about the building she was most proud of designing. It was a small community library, she said, wrapping both hands around her bowl. The reading room had a curved wall that caught afternoon light like a cupped hand holding something fragile. She paused. That probably sounds strange. It sounds exactly right, he said. He showed her a photograph on his camera's small screen. A doorway in a Lisbon alley where the shadow and light fell so perfectly it looked staged. It wasn't staged, he said. Yuna studied the image carefully, tilting the camera slightly in her hands. You see things in the geometry. You build things so people can feel something, he replied. We're doing the same job. She looked at him a beat longer than she meant to, then looked back at the photograph. By midnight, they had moved to a quieter stretch of Terminal 1. Sitting on the floor with their backs against the window, the storm still making itself known in long, low rumbles. He had a playlist, soft, unhurried music, playing from his phone between them like a small fire. She had stopped pretending to look at her sketchbook and was just talking, which for Yuna was its own kind of extraordinary. After Taipei, I've got nothing mapped, he said, leaning back against the rain-streaked glass with one knee drawn up, easy and completely untroubled by it. Which sounds scary, but it mostly just feels like room. She found to her surprise that she envied it. Do you ever want to stay somewhere, she asked. Just stay. I stayed in Porto for 6 weeks once, he said. I kept thinking I should leave. Then one morning, I just didn't want to. So I didn't. What changed? He thought for a moment. I stopped waiting for something to happen and just let it be the thing that was happening. She was quiet after that. Not uncomfortable quiet. Thinking quiet. Do you ever get lonely? She asked. It came out more honest than she intended. He was silent for a moment. The playlist moved through something slow and piano-heavy. Yeah, he said. But mostly I get lonely when I'm somewhere and I see something I want to show someone, and there's no one to show it to. He glanced at her sideways when he said it. Around 1 a.m., they found a vending machine tucked in a service corridor, the kind stocked with hot canned drinks that nobody buys at any normal hour. Eli studied the options with the same seriousness he gave everything. Hot corn soup, hot milk tea, hot tomato drink. The tomato one is better than it sounds, Yuna said. He turned to look at her. You have had the hot tomato drink. It was 4 a.m. in Narita, she said. I was desperate. He handed her a can of warm corn soup without asking. She accepted it without comment, which was, for her, a form of warmth. She told him about her mother's apartment in Mapo, the way it smelled like sesame and dish soap, and something she had never been able to name. What does it feel like? He asked. Being there. Like being allowed to be smaller than I usually am, she said. He nodded slowly, like that made complete sense to him. He told her about his father's kitchen in Valencia, the only place he'd ever felt completely still. My dad makes this sofrito that takes 4 hours, he said. He never rushes it. I used to think that was crazy. And now? Now I think it's the sanest thing I've ever seen. She asked him what home felt like, not a place, but the feeling. He thought for a long time, long enough that she didn't expect an answer. Then, like the first photo of a roll that actually comes out, she was quiet for a moment. That's a good answer. It's an honest one, he said, looking at her. She asked him about the scar through his eyebrow. He described the hiking trip in exactly as much detail as she suspected he always did. So we're on this ridge in the Pyrenees, he began, both hands already involved. Visibility is maybe 30 meters. My friend Tomas, who I want to be very clear was the one who suggested this, has the map upside down, which we don't discover until after I've already gone over a loose rock and face planted directly into the only boulder within a 50-meter radius. She found herself laughing. A real laugh, surprised out of her, unguarded and genuine. He looked at her like that was the best thing that had happened all week. They ended up back at the gate area around 1:45. Someone had turned the overhead lights to their night setting, warm and amber, and the terminal had thinned to almost nothing. It felt less like an airport and more like somewhere they had chosen to be. He showed her 3 more photographs. She told him about 3 more buildings: the Maxi in Rome, the train station in Antwerp, a footbridge in Bristol that made her cry the first time she crossed it, though she didn't explain why, and he didn't ask her to. "When do you get there?" he asked. "Seoul. 6:10 a.m. if we board on time." She paused. "What's the first thing you do when you get somewhere new?" "Find one thing I didn't expect," he said. "Something that wasn't in any photograph. That's how I know I'm actually there." He looked at her. "What's the first thing you'll do when you get home?" She answered without hesitation, and the certainty of it surprised her. "Sleep in my mother's spare room," she said. "Just sleep." "That sounds right," he said quietly. "It does, doesn't it?" It wasn't quite a question. At 2:10, Eli looked toward the departure board in the distance. "My flight just posted a gate," he said. "Terminal 2. He did not move. "You should go," Yuna said. "You should go," he agreed. Neither of them did. Then she laughed, at herself, at both of them, at the whole absurd and perfect situation. And he laughed too. And that was the moment she understood that she did not want this night to have an end. At 2:20, the board changed again. Her gate was boarding. They both stood slowly, like neither of them had decided to yet. "Yuna Park," he said. "The way you say a name when you're committing it to memory." "Eli Navarro," she replied. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out her sketchbook. She opened to the last page she had drawn on. The curved reading room, rendered in soft pencil lines, and tore it out carefully, held it out to him. He took it with both hands. Then he reached into his camera bag and pulled out a photograph. Small, printed on matte paper, the kind he carried as proofs. The Lisbon doorway, light and shadow, impossibly balanced. She took it, looked at it, looked at him. "Safe flight," she said. "Safe flight," he said back. She walked toward the gate. She did not look back. Not because she didn't want to, but because she was the kind of person who understood that some moments are only perfect if you let them end cleanly. But at the door to the jet bridge, she stopped. She did look back. He was still standing there, holding her sketch with both hands, watching her with an expression she would think about on the flight home, and the day after, and longer than she would ever admit to anyone. She raised one hand. He raised the sketch. And the storm, which had kept them both from leaving on time, which had rearranged the entire careful order of one ordinary Tuesday, finally, gently let go.